What's going on, everyone? Jackson here from Vendetta Sports Media, back with another episode of the Court is in Session podcast. If you are watching us on YouTube, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode of the pod drops. Joining me once again today is our local Miami Heat fan who is very excited coming out of these first rounds of the playoffs, completely opposite of yours truly here. Matt Hannafin, aka The Diamond. Matt, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considering. I spent some time with some family over the weekend, and that was a lot of fun. Just getting to hang out, see people that I don't get to see all that often. Had some good food. Ate at some places in Memphis that I haven't ate at before, but all things considering, yeah, pretty good. So we'll jump right into it here. We are reacting to the first round of the NBA playoffs. They're technically not fully done. They still may not be done by the time this episode comes out. So we're recording this on a Sunday. Do the Kings and Warriors play tonight?
Yeah,
Right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. They
So
play at 3:30 Eastern,
yeah.
right
So
after Miami next.
yeah. So this episode will might be out before then. If not, then finally the first round will be complete because it's the only series to go 7 games, and the NBA really likes to draw out each series as long as they can. So, because like Philly won their series 4-0, and there were teams that haven't even played game three yet by the time that they
Right,
they had finished. And it's
right.
like, what are we doing, NBA? What's the scheduling? Then of course there was that awful Wednesday, this past Wednesday, where there were 2 games going on simultaneously all day,
Yeah,
and just like the structure of the games was so odd.
yeah.
Whoever was in charge of scheduling needs to really have a reevaluation of their career over there at the NBA headquarters. But so I told Matt this. I will be the first one to open up about my team, the Memphis Grizzlies. Um, oh boy, where do I even begin? uh,
I felt so bad for you watching Game Six because I was watching it and I'm
yeah,
like,
I'll be
this
on.
this
I'll be
must suck for Jackson, who's with family,
yeah.
who's on the East Coast. So this is like 11:30 midnight. Like
Yeah.
this is
I'll be
terrible.
honest. I They were down big at halftime, and I just turned it off, and I was like, it's late. The party is early in the morning because it's a little kids
Yeah,
party, and they wanted to have the party before nap time for all the kids, and so it's like at 10 o'clock in the morning, and like you said, it's midnight, so it's just like I really don't want to stay up late and watch this. And then I made a deal with myself because like usually I'll like look at my phone and stuff like as I'm like kind of getting
right.
tired and falling asleep and stuff. And I was like, okay, once I start getting kind of tired, I'll go look at the score. And if the score's improved, if it's fairly close and there's still some time left, maybe I'll turn the game on my phone and try to watch it, as long as I can. I looked at my phone and it was a 30-point game, and I said, well, so
Yeah.
long, 2022-2023 season.
It was
And
not a. I turned it off after. When did I thought probably turn it off after the third quarter. I was
yeah,
just like, there's no
no, there
there's
was,
no additional reason for me to watch this because it's like halftime. It was like what a 17-point lead. I was
yeah,
like, I hope it's some like I
it
hope
was,
Ja or Bane or someone leads some sort of a comeback. Maybe cuts it within single digits at some point, but
yeah.
that definitely did not
and
happen.
and and that just
Um,
gets to like the root of the problem for this series for me. I'm not going to blame the refs anyway. I joked all series, oh, it's 5v8 out there. It is what it is. But I'm not going to blame them because when watching the series, I thought the refs were terrible for both teams. Honestly, I thought there were moments where they were calling heavily in the favor of the Lakers, and then there were moments where they were calling heavily in favor of the Grizzlies. Austin Reeves is a flopper, though. Let's get that out of the way. I can't rock with you, dude. I want to rock with you, bro. You're from my area. We don't produce any professional athletes. To be fair, we have Malik Monk. That's in the NBA right now. So
ooh, okay,
so we've got Malik Monk and Austin Reeves, and there was another guy named Archie Goodwin who played for the Suns.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I always remember because he was the first NBA player I ever saw play in high school. And I saw Malik Monk. I never saw Austin Reeves play, but he literally is from a city that's like 20 minutes, if that, from me. So weird. But like all my friends, they went to high school when he was going to high school. I have some younger friends just from friend groups. They're all in their 20s, but still. Uh they got to see him play. So it's like, "Oh, hey, we know that guy." And he's kind of hoeing it out there because he's playing like I think he said in an interview too, he studied James Harden and Trey Young, and it's like that's two red flags for me right there when it comes to playing basketball. I'm like, wait a minute. But the root of it for me for this series was just the fact that couldn't make open shots. I think I saw a statistic going into game five, and I wish I would have known what it was after game five and then after game six the other day. But it was like going into game five, Memphis was 12 of 40 from open three pointers. Like what we would consider a wide open shot. They were 12 of 40. They weren't even 50%. They weren't even 30%. 12 of 40. And just there were multiple times where they were missing, they were blowing layups, a missed free throw here or there. Ja missed a free throw late in the overtime game four loss, which is the one that I think they should have won. That should have been their one road game that they won to get the home court advantage back. And then they should have been playing today or Monday or whenever for game seven. And then just to come out so flat in a do or die game, I'll never understand it. I never will. And I hope that this has just been a humbling experience for them. I know everyone says like, oh, they need to be humble. They haven't won anything. They need to be humble. Let's get one thing straight. Every NBA team talks trash. It's just the Grizzlies were the one that talked it the loudest. And everyone reacted to it. Because when they were talking trash, they were the young up and coming team. Because I've heard De'Aaron Fox and the Kings say wild things, but it gets swept under the rug because no one was expecting the Kings to be good this year.
Right.
And also SportsCenter, like,
oh my goodness,
they were like their Twitter feed. I have never seen them attack a team so much like they did Memphis. Never seen
that
it.
one was a little bit of a like, it was weird optics for sure.
Yeah, and
I remember seeing that, and I'm just like, you're completely dunking on the Grizzlies. Like, is this gonna be? Is this how it's gonna be for either the Kings or Warriors?
And I don't think it will.
Like,
I don't think it will. And then we'll get to your series here in a minute. Giannis, as a 1 seed, lost to the 8 seed, and he's getting praised at the end of it.
I don't think he's getting praised
for what he said. He's getting praised for what he said.
All right. I think it was a little bit of a mixed bag. Okay, but there was some praise in there.
Yeah. No. I know I've seen a lot of people. Maybe it's just the side of Twitter that I'm on. I've seen more praise than I've seen knocking him as well. But generally from like in the media, it's more discourse in the media about they're either praising him for what he said or they're like, no, it's a failure. You're the 1 seed, title favorites, and you lost to the 8 seed.
Right.
No offense to the Heat, absolutely. Jimmy Butler is that guy. I've always been a Jimmy guy. I wish he was in a Memphis jersey. I wanted him bad when he was, kicked out of the Timberwolves when the Timberwolves didn't want him. Like, come to Memphis, you'd be great here. But I digress. I just hope, again, we're gonna have a fully healthy Jaren going into the offseason. Hopefully he stays healthy. He had foot surgery coming out of last year, missed a little bit this year. Bane's healthy. Brooks is gone. I'll say it right now. I don't think there's really any fan that wants him back, especially after dodging the media so much. Like, it's common for players to dodge the media, but when you talk as much as Dylan Brooks and then you dodge the media, that's a bad look.
You can't.
You can't dodge.
I talked about this on the Daily Show. You can't do that.
You can't dodge.
At some point, you would have to lean into it.
Yeah, and
I was talking about this with a friend of mine because he was just like, can you imagine like being like the most hated player in basketball or the most hated player in the league? It's like at some point, the process of getting to that point is probably not a good thing because you're probably gonna having to do like dirty shit or like whatever.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to lean into it, and or at least I would have done that.
Yeah,
but also just sitting here talking about it, I'm not actually in that situation.
Yeah,
it's different.
And I'll at least give Ja credit this. I know he got some flack for skipping the other day, but there are other players that skip their same games too. So I'll just say
Yeah,
that. But
Giannis skipped after game 4.
exactly. And I was gonna say, yeah. Well, at least after the loss the other night, he owned up and said that he owns the "I'm fine in the West" comment, which again, I don't fault him for saying, because when you ask him a question like that, what do you expect a guy like that to say?
Right.
And I think it was just something easy that the media could latch onto for easy views and clicks, because that's kind of what the media is in the business of, is easy clicks. That's what they sell to their advertisers.
Yep.
We're in the media, and we understand the process of great titles, great SEO,
Yeah.
and trying to get the attention of the masses. It's a tough game, and that was just a comment. I'm sure he still feels that way, because Memphis came into the series injured. They were missing two key guys in Steven Adams and BC. Ja missed a game, and he played hurt the entire series. So it's unfortunate. It sucks. It is what it is, though. I just have to hope that come off season, I know it wasn't from lack of trying at the trade deadline, but I really do hope that Memphis is very active in the off season. They have a ton of picks at their repertoire. They've got some expendable contracts. The movable contracts are Adams, Tyus, and Kennard. So, and one or two of them might have to be moved if you want to kind of get like that guy, that next guy to come in. Who that's going to be, I have no idea. I need to do some more research on it. I've kind of put the Grizzlies stuff behind me. I just want to focus on the playoffs right now. But probably this week I'll do some research and dig a little bit deeper into who I want them to grab. But oh well, man. Oh well. It's not like I didn't have title expectations for them anyway this year. I just wanted to get to the Western Conference Finals and see what happens. I thought we could do that, but unfortunately could not. So congrats to the Lakers fans. You guys get this one. You guys had some really good trade deadline moves, um, which yeah, good job, and we'll see you next year.
I don't think you're gonna like me for the stats that I'm about to point out.
Oh, I'm sure
But just piggybacking off of what you said about their 3-point shooting, I
it's
found
atrocious.
um, at least per NBA.com, which I think uses Synergy Sports tracking data for at least the shots. On open threes, which is considered the closest defender being within 4 to 6 feet of the shooter,
Yep.
the Grizzlies were 24 of 79 in this series, which is if you do the math, that's 30.4%.
Yeah, that's bad.
On wide open threes, which the closest defender would be 6+ feet. That's like the highest that
Yeah.
they go. Surprisingly enough, the Grizzlies were 43 of 137, which doesn't feel right mathematically speaking, but that's 31.4%. And so they're hovering around 30 to 31% for the series on open or wide open threes.
Yeah.
That just feels like 137 attempts feels like a high number, but that was a number that the tracking data came up
Yeah.
with. I don't know how accurate all of that is, because it's like when it comes to like closeouts or like help defense, helping off a defender or something like that,
Yeah.
like that gets always factored into this. And so, and I'm sure it differs based on like when the player's releasing or going up for a jump shot or whatever. I don't know exactly how all that works, but
Yeah.
regardless, not good.
Well,
Not good.
just like Jared Allen said, the lights were too bright. They were brighter than we expected.
I mean, I remember putting something. I put something on Twitter at halftime, and then I put something in the Slack during the third quarter, like just how atrocious Memphis' shooting was in the second half, or not in the second half, but just in general, just
Yeah.
because it's like Anthony Davis was quite literally everywhere.
He
Like I don't
was.
remember that dominant of a defensive performance from him, and he was really good throughout the series, but it felt like he
Yeah.
reached an
Well,
entirely new
well,
level
people,
at
what
the game.
people are quick to forget. I know we call him street clothes all the time, but when he's healthy, he's a top 5 player in the NBA.
Right.
He is.
And it was like legitimately like, wait, like what exactly is he doing on the defensive end? Like he was what's the word I'm looking for? He was swaying, detracting,
Mm-hmm.
disrupting everything within 5 to 10 feet whenever he was just kind of near the rim. And it's just like, if Memphis isn't hitting open shots,
It's over.
this is a wrap. Like you can't shoot as bad as you did from two and expect to win a playoff series or a playoff game, even if you hit 15 to 23s in a game, or
Yeah.
like whatever that number would be. Like it's so unsustainable. Or not unsustainable. It's just so unrealistic, especially when the Lakers felt like in the third quarter, like D'Angelo Russell just couldn't miss.
Yeah.
And it's just like at that point,
Yeah.
it's very, very tough to overcome in that
Yeah,
series.
and again, it's just that's all it came down to. They just couldn't make shots. They had the shots. I know a lot of people were giving Taylor Jenkins flack, but his offensive scheme was working. The guys just weren't putting the shots in, and the stats back it up. But I'm tired of being depressed. I'm done talking about the Grizzlies. So let's move on to something happier. I'll hand the reins over to you for a minute and let you take your victory lap um, with Miami shocking the world and becoming just one of a handful of 8 seeds to knock off the 1 seed. You didn't just knock off the 1 seed; you gave them the old gentleman sweep,
Yep.
4-1. So take it away, Matt. Talk to me.
Well, it was the sixth ever 8 seed to beat a 1 seed, the fourth ever since the 7 game series became a thing in the first round in 2003. The first ever team to one, be a play-in team and advance in a playoff series, and two, beat a number 1 seed as the 8 seed in 5 games or less. And so it was quite. It was again still. I mean, we're what 3 or 4 days removed from Game 5. Game 1 of Heat Knicks start in like 4 hours. So it's right around the
Yeah.
corner. But just going back on everything, like it's still hard to put into words just everything that happened. I mean, it was a pretty epic collapse from Milwaukee. I mean, just going back to Game 5, I mean, they were up 16 heading into the fourth quarter. They started a lineup with Middleton and Giannis on the floor while Miami was without Jimmy and Bam. And Miami still found a way to go on an 11-1 run,
Yeah.
even without Jimmy on the floor for that entire stretch. Jimmy just like, what the hell, dude? Like, and I say that in the best way possible, because it's like, how in the you know what? I mean, he dropped 38. He averaged 38, 6, 5 assists, 2 steals, shot nearly 60% from the floor, 44% from deep, with the true shooting percentage of 67.1%.
He's got that dog in him.
He's got that dog in him. Like, I've never seen someone talk so much shit to Drew Holiday in a single game ever in my life, because he completely dominated Drew. He had they had the matchup data after, and throughout the series he had 66 points on like 53% 50. I think it was either like 53 or 55 or something like that percent shooting. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Against Drew in that series, he scored 125 of his 128 or 125 of his 188 points on either Drew, Chris, Giannis, or Brooke in that series on 59% shooting. Like, he completely dominated a top 5 defense with 3 elite defenders. Yeah, Chris is obviously lost a step or two athletically because of his knee injuries, and just did not look like himself throughout that series, at least on the defensive end. But he can still hold his own to a degree, but it didn't matter when Jimmy Butler was lined up across him. Like, we saw some, like, this is one of the best series in Heat playoff history. I don't think that's crazy to admit, even though it was a first round series, but just given the context of who you're going up against, it's one of the best, at least I've ever seen. I mean, it doesn't rival it, but it's damn close to Wade's. Oh, there's your.
This is my co-host.
It rivals what Wade did in games 3 through 6 in the 06 finals, where it was just like he just could not be stopped no matter what. And when he was getting stopped, well, he was going to the free throw line anyway, so it wasn't going to matter. I mean, Jimmy didn't get to the free throw line a whole lot. I mean, he had 18 free throws in game 4 when he had 56, but other than that, like, I think he had 9 in game 5. Like, he still found a way to completely will Miami. And like, what we saw through Miami, like, if you told me Miami was, one, the second most efficient offense among any first round team, and two, shooting 45% from three in the series against, again, a top 5 defense, I would have laughed in your face because that's definitely not what I saw through the first 84 games. And
And
that's just the volatility. That's just the weirdness of the playoffs. It's like
yep.
sometimes you find the right matchup. I mean, Miami was going up against a defense that loves to play drop and a defense that will camp out in the paint and won't necessarily adjust to that. I mean, yeah, again, they have Drew, they have Chris, albeit not like his former all defensive self, and Giannis, who missed roughly half the series, but they're still a good defensive team with a good defensive structure. But they play a lot of drop that sometimes that you're going to go 3-point hunting if that's the case. But even the threes they did make, like half of Jimmy's threes that he did make were just contested threes, and it's Jimmy G buckets. Like there's certain points where you could play all the defense in the world on him, but he's just that good and that great in that moment to where he's just going to knock the shots down regardless. It's just like, what do you like half the times that Drew was lined up against him, it was just like, what are you going to do? Like, there's nothing that Drew could have possibly done. And Drew is a very handsy, he's a very physical defender. And I respect the refs for letting it play out that way because they were both going at each other, just back and forth. And Drew was kind of like PJ Tucker against Giannis, or not against Giannis, against Durant. Like he was just kept going at him just with physicality and trying to do whatever he could to stop him. But it wasn't ultimately working in the end. But they let it be physical, and that's exactly how at least that particular matchup was, and that's exactly how really anyone against Jimmy was in that series, and just didn't ultimately matter. But like Miami was completely dog shit in the regular season. They were 25th in offense, 27th in 3-point percentage. Everyone regressed from last year. And like watching this team, covering this team through the first 84 games, I was like, there's no way this team is going to be Milwaukee in 7 games. There's no way. And they listened, they heard me, I guess. I don't know.
Yep.
They listened to all the doubters, and it's just even after game 1 when Miami went 15-25 from deep, I was like, this is unsustainable. Like there's no way this will happen over a 7-game series. Like it's just not possible. And unfortunately, Miami did lose their second leading scorer and their third best player in Tyler Hero that game. And so that's like, okay, this is even like worse for Miami.
This was going to bring that up.
If anything, this was a Tyler series because I mean he loves hunting the drop. He thrives against it, and it's just like, well, if that's the case, Miami is definitely in a worse position than they were. And then, of course, they lose Oladipo, I think, in game 3. And it's just like, this is just getting worse and worse, just health-wise, for Miami's backcourt rotation. But again, in the end, it didn't ultimately matter because Jimmy Buckets was Jimmy Buckets. And they did get solid contributions from Caleb Martin. They did get in bits and pieces. Like Bam, I thought was huge in those final 2 games, at least defensively. He did a much better job offensively in game 5 than in game 4. But I thought he definitely had an impact. Like Kyle Lowry, even in the 20 to 25 minutes he comes off the bench, he's not going to get 100 shots up, but he's still going to be an impact, at least defense, or at least he was at points defensively, which was surprising because he's not a good point of attack defender. He's lost a lot athletically. He's not as big anymore. But yeah, no, they did get solid contribution. I mean, Duncan Robinson was 13 of 17 from deep in the minutes that he played. It's just that's an absurd percentage for him, and I'm glad he finally has a regular role. I think that's when he's at his best. Schematics aside, I mean, when he has the consistent, like you're going to get 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, he's not as good defensively. Teams are going to pick on him, but I thought, especially since Max wasn't that good this series, I thought he was a good contribution. And then the skeleton of Kevin Love. Like I was very critical of Kevin Love throughout the season. I still am. I'm still holding that stance. But he was good in this series, and he was definitely an impactful presence, especially in 20 to 30 minutes. Like on the glass, he hit 5 threes in game 5. Like if he can continue to do that, then by all means do it. Like there's nothing to be critical about from that aspect. I just didn't think he was that good in the regular season. I thought Spo used him poorly, but regardless, he did his work in this series, and I hope that's able to carry over for this next series as well as everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy is him. I tweeted that out, I think, twice.
Silly, dude. It's silly what he does.
In
like
the past 2 games.
Yeah, like I told this to Germani on this last week's Daily Show. I think it was either Thursday or Friday where I told this to him. I was like, this is something that the first time I've said this like on like air, but there are certain plays in a game that you could look back on where it's like Jimmy's gonna have like a holy shit type game. Like
Yeah.
in game 4, for example, it was when he kind of dunked over Giannis in the first quarter
Hmm.
and he stared at him. Like he stared back at him, and it was just like, okay, like Jimmy scored 22 points in that first quarter. He scored 22 of Miami's 28 points, and it was just like you could tell just even by that alone that he was just gonna have some like holy hell game. But even like when he dunked on Giannis, or kind of dunked on Giannis, it was kind of like Giannis came in at the last second. But when he kind of dunked on him and then looked like stared back at him, like it's like, okay, you're gonna get like a holy shit Jimmy game. Like in game 5, it was when he had that ridiculous sequence where he blocked Grayson Allen on that
Hmm.
3-pointer, gets the dunk on the other end, comes back on the other side, finds a way to finds a way to poke away a pass from Drew Holiday on a pick and roll because he was playing off ball, he's playing help side, and then pulls up on Drew from 3-point range on the other end in semi transition. It's just like that 4 possession sequence alone. It's like you're gonna get another holy shit Jimmy game. Like he's just that locked in. Like there are certain sequences that you can look back to where it's like, oh well, like he's really gonna have like the I'm him game. Like he's really gonna have that FU. I'm gonna will my team to this win type victory, regardless of the supporting regardless of what the
Yeah.
supporting cast does. He's gonna at least play his part. Like there's certain sequences in a game like where you at least you tell at the time where you could look back on being like, oh, he's about ready to snap.
Yeah. And
And like,
there's
that's
there
the
was
beauty of Butler because he finds a way at least in these types of moments. He
yeah, and,
finds
and and there was just no stopping him down the stretch, especially those final two games. Every single shot was just
yep.
immaculate. My jaw would hit the floor, and then everyone and their mother knew that inbounds play was going to Jimmy. Didn't know how it
Yeah.
was getting to Jimmy, but it was going to Jimmy. And
Right. And
some,
that was part of the bad, like you look back and that was a very poorly coached game from Bud. Like
it
you have
was,
Giannis on the inbounds, guarding Gabe Vincent, which okay, that's respectable. But then you take Brooke Lopez off the floor.
yeah,
Like Brooke Lopez wasn't on the floor. It's like just have him standing near the rim. Like
yeah,
what exactly are again, who's gonna get the ball.
yeah.
There's variations
And
of that play where Miami's ran before where someone's curling to the basket for either a lob attempt or whatever the case is. Like they ran the same play for Tyler Johnson in a summer league game in like 2015. Yeah, you're not going to remember that obviously, but they've ran variations. Like they ran a play where Jimmy got a lob from Vincent against Houston earlier in the season. It was different, but that's kind of where they're going to go, or at least that's where you could best predict it. Um, but just to have that guy like near the rim, it would just make all the sense in the world, especially when Duncan Robinson's getting guarded beyond half court. Like he was on the other side of the court and there's still a guy on him. It's like, why don't you use that guy with what, 2 seconds left? Like, why
yeah,
don't you use the guy defending him to be Brooke and have him just camped out near the rim? I mean, I know they're only up 2, so it's like you wanted to protect from the free but it's like if Duncan Robinson's on the other side of the court, you don't need a guy there. They're not going to pass the ball to Duncan Robinson unless if he charges up, and then you could put a guy on him, whatever. But if that's just have a guy just camped in the middle near the
hmm,
rim, like that would make all the sense in the world. Especially if you're having Giannis defend the inbounder and he's not that guy at the rim, you got to have someone else there. Like I'm all for putting size there, but at least make it make sense, or at least have no one defend the inbounds at all. I mean, yeah, you want to make the pass tougher, but if that's ultimately the case, like you have to have a guy near the rim there, and that's where I think that. But I mean, among many other coaching mistakes, like not calling the timeout at the end of regulation,
yeah,
the way he utilized Giannis late, there's just like there's multiple coaching just f ups that you can look back on.
yeah. And I will say this with the Coach Bud thing. Now, I haven't seen like an actual story on it. I just saw a couple of reports, but reportedly his brother passed
I did see that. I
during
did see
the
that yesterday.
and
Yeah.
I mean, kudos. I'll give him kudos for going out there and trying to do his job.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was some strange, uncharacteristic mistakes from a head coach of Bud's pedigree, someone that has been in the NBA for as many years as he has, and has like this immaculate coaching tree of assistants that used to be under him that are now in coaching positions across the NBA and coach really good teams. So
Right.
I just like yeah, I'm gonna be critical of his mistakes, but I'm also gonna
Right.
be understanding where,
Right.
like, I could
Right.
see where his head wasn't in the right mindset, and
Right.
because even the players in the Heat players in the huddle going into OT, they were like, they knew that the Bucks had a
Yeah.
timeout, and they're like, why didn't they call a timeout? But congratulations to your Heat, congratulations to you, Matt. You get to be a happy fan where whatever happens from here is above all expectations that I think everyone had
Yeah.
for the Heat and
I
Jimmy.
still want to beat the Knicks though. It's
I
just
don't blame you. We'll get into that here in a little bit. I'm sure we'll kind of quickly move through these two. We kind of laughed about it before we started recording, but that's the Philly and Brooklyn series and the Denver and Minnesota series. I'm kind of grouping them together because we kind of discussed it, like I said before the podcast, and we were like, "What happened in that series?"
yeah. It's like what happened. Like I know Anthony Edwards went off. I know
Yeah,
he was a shot away from at least tying it, or at least it was either tying it or for a game-winning shot in Game 5. I can't remember what it was. That again, can't remember.
yeah,
It was just like Like I like watching Denver. I like watching Minnesota. I watch those games, but just from like for some reason the aesthetics were just off. Again, Denver was phenomenal in that series. They had 6 double-figure scores. Jokic went off for uh I think 40. Like he just had an absurd stat line. He averaged like 29, 14, and 9 or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
That series. Jamal Murray looked like he was in the bubble again. And
Yes,
we'll probably discuss what happened last night,
yeah,
but
and I
he
was
was phenomenal again last night. Like
yeah,
he
no, no,
looks really, really good.
yeah,
And it
and no,
looks like
and
he can play like this, they can go on a run.
yeah. My biggest takeaway from the series was that I think playoff Jamal is back.
Mm-hmm.
And last night again we finally after all these weeks have a round two series that finally started between Denver and Phoenix, and yeah, we'll get into it a little bit more later when we talk about our round two predictions. But I think Jamal's back to the way that he was in the bubble. I think he's finally back from that injury. He is comfortable once again in this system, and that is dangerous. That is very
Yeah.
dangerous because now you add with an elite 3 point shooter in Porter and
Yep.
just whatever you call Jokic. I don't even know what type of label to put on him. Just the superstar that he is. And then you have a point guard bucket getter like Jamal Murray. And then they
Yeah.
have some great pieces fitting around them as well. That's dangerous. That is
Yeah,
very
especially
dangerous.
when you can get what you can get from KCP as like
Yes, I
that
think
floor spacer, and then Aaron Gordon, who was having the best year of his career this year.
KCP has he's always been a role player. Again, there's just dudes that I want in a Grizzly uniform.
Yeah.
KCP has always been that dude because wherever he goes, he always shows up. He doesn't get a big spotlight, but he
Mhm.
does his job and he does it well. And that's
Yeah.
hard. That's hard to come by from someone for consistently for as long as he's been in the NBA to do that job over the course of time.
Right.
And like when the Lakers let go of him, that was very stupid of them. I'm like, why? Why? You need the 3 point shooting. You just got rid of like your most consistent 3 point shooter. Why would you do? Was that in the was that in the Westbrook trade that happened, or did he leave in
Uh,
free agency? Like, I
I
can't
think it was
remember.
a Westbrook trade because he was in Washington for a little while.
Yeah, yeah. Then he
I
ended up.
think.
I
I
think so
think.
too. I think so too. But literally anything else, you covered everything else about that series. And then Philly and Brooklyn.
Yeah, that series
Uh,
was boring.
Philly won. Philly won. Now, I guess the biggest impact is the injury to Embiid, where, and I'm a little confused because I saw from some reports that he was going to miss Game 1, and then there was some. I saw another report that said that it would be like a happy, not like a happy coincidence, but like a happy surprise, a pleasant surprise if he was available for Game 2. meaning that he can
Yeah,
miss the first two games of the series.
right. I
And
mean, no, go on.
no, I was just going to say that I know we'll kind of give our predictions later, but that could mean a lot for this
Right.
series. If Boston is somehow able to take both game 1 and game 2, it's not an impossible hill to overcome, but you've made it a lot harder for yourself if you're Philly.
Right. Right. No, it was I think the official prognosis was like a grade 1 like sprained LCL. And with that, I want to say I saw somewhere where like the recovery timetable for like an injury similar to that is like 4 to 6 weeks. And like they're going on 2 weeks rest for Embiid, or like close, like a week and a half, 2 weeks. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be playing on a compromised knee. And like at 7 foot with that much mileage, like that's tough.
Yeah.
Like I know they're trying to get him back to at least compete in this series, but at the same time, like it's going to be a tough mountain. Like I would hope that Philly's able to at least able to split
Mm.
these two games. But like again, they're playing on the road, they're playing in a hostile environment. Like, yeah, there's times where there's Boston, there's a lot of variance and volatility because of what they do offensively.
Yeah.
And so you might run into a night to where they're shooting poorly from deep. And Philly was the most efficient 3-point shooting team, I believe, in the regular season, or at least one of them. And they were efficient again in these playoffs or in this first series, despite it felt like them and Brooklyn scoring like 160 combined points because of how low scoring and mucky it was. But Philly was an efficient 3-point shooting team, and so it's like there might be a game or two. I have no idea. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing this in here. There might be a game or two where it's like again, Boston shoots poorly. Philly can't miss anything under the sun. Kind of like how it was in Game 3. I mean, not exactly, but like kind of like how it was in Game 3 for in the Atlanta Boston series. I mean, Boston still did shoot pretty well from deep, if I can remember correctly, but Atlanta wasn't missing. And so it's like if something like that happens in one of these two games, that would be huge for Philly. But I don't think that's gonna happen, and I think it's gonna be an uphill climb. And like one of like before this series, like I was very interested to see what Boston would do to kind of defend Embiid and kind of throw at him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
are they gonna double him similarly to how Brooklyn did? Are they gonna like how are they going to play him straight up? What lineups are they going to use to try to get him out of his comfort zone? Like, are they? I'm guessing the formula is to go small, kind of like with the Horford small ball five
Yeah.
lineups. But like, even in the lineups where Horford and Rob are on the floor together, like, is Rob taking that assignment? Is Rob going to be defending PJ Tucker and kind of being that weak side help roamer? Are they going to have Embiid straight up on Al Horford? Like, what are they going to do to kind of counter that? But then again, like after I mean they can still find a way to configure all that out, but I mean the usage for James Harden just went up exponentially. The
Mm.
usage and the importance of Tyrese Maxey, who
Yeah.
was one of the best, if not probably their second best player in this Brooklyn series. Like his usage just went up exponentially. Boston has multiple defenders to throw at both of them. Smart, White, Brown, like you name it, they have guys, they have bodies to throw at him. So it's like now you're going to have to rely on Paul Reed, who I like Paul Reed. He's a very energetic spark plug, but he's not Joel Embiid. And then obviously Montrezl Harrell, and who the heck knows if they're going to rely on Dwayne Dedman? I have no idea. I don't even know the series, but regardless, they're going to have. It just took it. It made it that much more hard or that much more difficult to beat Boston in the 7-game series, even if after it was already not in Philly's favor. I just think this is a bad matchup for Philly, but I don't know how that's going to affect this series. But yeah, Embiid's going to be playing on like a compromised knee, and it's like unfortunately he's had to deal with injuries at this time of the year in the past. And like that's just the sucky part about injuries. Injuries happen all the time in these
Yeah.
playoffs. It's like it's not. I think it's not who's the most talented. Sometimes it's just who's the most healthy, who's the most durable. Um, that's just unfortunately how it is. And like he suffered like an orbital fracture last year in the who did they play in the first round again? They played Toronto,
Toronto. Yeah.
and like he looked compromised against Miami. He missed part of that series, and he just didn't look the same. I mean, unfortunately, he was also going up against Bam and Jimmy and PJ, who defended him very well. especially Bam and PJ, but he just didn't look the same. Like he's dealt with knee injuries in the past as well, to where it's like it's just he looks compromised,
Yeah.
and it's like playoff series, especially when you're rushing yourself back for an injury that takes a month and a half to like fully recover from. Like, yeah, you would have hoped Boston and Atlanta went to Game 6 just to prolong this recovery. Again, I don't. It's hard for me to see Philly even winning this series now. As much as I didn't think they were going to win it before, I certainly don't
Yeah.
think they're going to. But
Yeah. And just to kind of shift to the other side and start kind of recapping the Boston and Atlanta series, I was looking at just some of the raw stats from the game, from all the games of that series. The biggest thing that sticks out to me that could help Philly, this could help Philly, is Boston's perimeter defense. They gave up a lot of threes. Now, granted, it's a lot of Trae Young, but there's also John Collins was hitting threes. DeAndre
yep,
Hunter was hitting threes. Um, Other guys were contributing as well. Even in Atlanta's losses, they were shooting close to 40% from three as a team, which as a team is phenomenal. That's
right.
phenomenal. So that could be because even some of these wins, just kind of looking at the just again just like the blanket, like not nothing too deep, nothing highly analytical, but just looking at just the stats as they are. Boston outside of game 1, I guess technically game 2 too, but didn't have like a super decisive win over a team that many saw as like a vastly inferior team. And if you go back to the regular season too, Boston notorious for getting big leads and losing them.
Right.
So I mean, if we could just kind of pseudo kind of make this into a prediction for the series, Philly has a fighting chance. Now, it's not as good of a chance if they had Embiid, but if they can get some excellent play from Maxey, from they're really going to need Tobias Harris to play what his contract is worth.
Yep.
It's just it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and Harden is going to have to be kind of what he was in Houston again. He's going to have to be
Yep.
that facilitator and the bucket getter that they need to be. Now, obviously, he's got a couple players that he can pass it off to that can also do some damage, but that could be the one thing that gets Boston kind of hung up in this series, and maybe Philly is able, even if Philly loses, is able to steal a game or two and just kind of put a little bit more wear and tear into Boston and expose a little bit more of that. And again, Boston has great defenders, so it surprises me that their perimeter defense was not that great in this series.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if the Hawks unlocked something, they figured something out, or if it's just because they have Trae Young who's taking most of those shots, and because of the gravity that Trae Young has on the perimeter, that's leaving guys like DeAndre Hunter open, and he just in a couple of games showed up and hit the open shots that he had.
Right. No, at least it felt like throughout that series, as that series was going on, Trae felt more. It looked like just from the eyes, it looked like Trae and DeJounte were more comfortable getting downhill.
Yeah.
I know at certain points throughout this series, they were Trae was drawing switches on like Al Horford, and he
Yeah.
was able to blow by him. And then
Mm-hmm.
when that something like that happens, you're able to bend a defense, and guys are pinching from the corners or from the wings, and then you're moving the ball or whatnot. But it felt like Trae was more comfortable getting downhill. And then even in times where he wasn't necessarily getting downhill, I mean, when he gets going, he gets going. And so, I mean, he was able to rise up from 30 feet for that game
Yeah.
winner in game 5. And
Yeah.
so it's just like he looked more comfortable just with the ball in his hands,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what we've seen from Trae time and time again in these moments
Yeah.
as the series went on. And I thought that was really huge. I mean, and DeJounte was pretty good. I mean, he was making tough shots throughout the series, but he was also another one of those, like, when he's getting downhill, good things are happening
Mm-hmm.
for Atlanta. And so I think that's what they kind of unlocked. And you could kind of see, like, if that happens with like a James Harden. I mean, James Harden's obviously he's lost a lot athletically. Like, it was weird how he hasn't gotten to the line more than 10 times, I think, since mid-March. And that's over a month of him. Like, I mean, I think he got to the line like 9 times or something like that in game 5 or 6, or not game 5 or 6, game 4,
Mhm.
against Philly or against Brooklyn. Man, I can't talk right now. But he's not getting to the rim that much, and that's obviously what we've kind of seen from him over the last few seasons, just with his drives slowly declining more and more and more. Um, but if he's able to at least bend that defense or draw that mismatch to create something else for Maxey or for Tobias, you're right. Tobias will be a huge X factor in this series just because of like he was good in that Brooklyn series, especially when Embiid was out. Like I thought he had like a fairly good series, and I think he kind of flies under the radar. In that aspect, if PJ can knock down just a couple of threes, dude, you don't have to do much. Just knock down a couple of
Yeah.
threes, make it hard on Tatum, make it hard on Jalen whenever you're switched up on him. Like that's his role. But like if he's able to knock down at least a couple of corner threes, that could swing a run in a game or potentially a game in a series. Like whatever the case is. And then whatever you can get out of like I don't know if Niang can make a couple of threes off the bench. If D'Anthony Melton could be a disruptor at the point of attack and make shots, that would be huge for him. So it's like you're going to need more contributions now from Harden, from Maxey, from Harris. Those big three more than ever. I just said they're a big three. They're not a big three, but you know what I mean. They're top.
I know what you mean. Yeah, 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 yeah,
um,
yeah.
if you're able to at least get some supplementary production from them as well as like again the Paul Reeds of the world who I have a feeling. I mean, Boston was a very good defensive rebounding team, but there's just going to be times where Paul Reed's just like a menace on the offensive glass and just kind of like that guy who will spark a run or two in a game. Possibly, I don't know, but if you're able to get that type of 3 point production and just shot making production from everyone involved, they I guess have a puncher's chance. But again, like Boston, they're also a team to where it's like they can ignite. Like Jalen was phenomenal in this Atlanta series. Of course, he's playing against his hometown team, and it feels like he always has done a good job against Atlanta. And Atlanta was one of the worst defensive teams throughout the second half of the
Yeah.
season, so that wasn't necessarily surprising to me. Same thing with Tatum. I mean, I know Tatum wasn't as great, but Tatum can still go off for 30 to 40 points at any given time. Not necessarily saying he will, but he can. He has the capability of it. And then whatever you can get out of like a Malcolm Brogdon who's been fairly good. Like Derek White, unsung hero of the Boston Celtics season. He was probably their third best player, I would say.
Yep.
Just both what he's done offensively, especially in that Atlanta series, and obviously what he did defensively. He might make first team all defense this year. It wouldn't surprise me if he would. He's a remarkable shot blocker. He'd get a steal and a half a game. He's very disruptive pretty much wherever he is, no matter who he's going up against. And so he was kind of like that unsung hero. What you can get from Al Horford as kind of that 3-and-D floor spacer. Um, he's going to space the floor a lot in this series to try to bring out Paul Reed, try to bring out Montrezl Harrell, to try to bring out, Joel Embiid when he's playing. That's kind of what he's going to do. I mean, Rob Williams is that vertical spacer, that shot blocker that we all know him and love him to be for 15 to 20 minutes a game. Hopefully his knee holds up and he's finally able to have a healthy postseason. I don't know how much that's going to happen, but I just hope because he's so much fun to watch and Boston's so much better when he's on the floor than when he's not. And it's just like Marcus Smart. The Marcus Smart experience this season's been a little bit more fluctuating than it has even in past years, but he can still provide juice for Boston at any given time. So it's like Boston just has too many bodies, I think. Not too many bodies, but like there's a lot of sources of production that they can from outside of Brown and Tatum, which I think will help in this series. At least I think more so than Philly. I just don't love Philly. I don't love Philly's bench all that much. And Boston, they have like a set 8-9 man group. The rotations can get a little weird because it's like I've been critical of Maz a little bit just with how he's used White late in games. Like I think he's had a little bit of a shorter leash on White than I would love for him to have. But regardless, I'm more confident, especially if Embiid's out. Yeah, there is a puncher's chance. Like Philly was the third best offense in the regular season.
Hmm.
Like there's still really good offense, but a lot of that was through Embiid and like
Yeah.
what could Embiid create out of this, whether it's for him or someone else. Um, how will the defense play that? But now that that part is at least eliminated or put to the side for at least a couple of games, that I don't know if Philly
Yeah.
can overcome that. Again, they would have to go bonkers from deep and hope Boston doesn't go as bonkers. But
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Um, two more series, and then we'll be finished up with our first round review. Phoenix and LA. Injuries kind of defined this one, unfortunately. Paul George came into the series injured once again. It's kind of a similar story that's been plaguing the Clippers uh, as of the last few years in the playoffs. And then, of course, Kawhi again. His knees are unfortunately, it feels like they're giving out on him. I don't know how much longer he has left, honestly, and it's sad. I hate to see it. I've never been more scared of an NBA player in my life than going to watch him play the Grizzlies in the playoffs with the San Antonio Spurs. Whenever he got the ball, I was legitimately scared for my life and for everyone around me. Uh, but I think just that was kind of the big story for this game for me. Excuse me.
unfortunately, yes. Like it sucked because a healthy Paul George and a healthy Kawhi Leonard, with the kind of depth that LA has, 8, 9 men deep, like it would have made for a really, really, really fun and enticing series. And like the thrill of the unknown, unfortunately, but like it wouldn't be impossible for the Clippers to win that series should both of them been healthy. Like Kawhi Leonard through those first couple of games was the best player in the series, but then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're like, wait, he has a torn meniscus? Like what? Like it was just kind of took everyone by surprise. I think it was either game 3 or game 4 where they just said he was out, and we're all like, wait, like he was injured? Like there wasn't really much smoke around it, but unfortunately his knee just gave out on him, I guess. And that's the sucky part because it's like
Yeah.
the Clipper fans, this was a rough year for Clippers fans, just because it's like you had so much expectation coming into the
They
year
started
of like,
hot too
yeah,
this year.
if Paul George and if Kawhi Leonard were both healthy, then you were in title contention because the league was so wide open. Obviously, at the time, you didn't know that Phoenix was going to do what they did at the trade deadline, so it's like you really didn't know who was making out of the West. And Kawhi Leonard was back after I think recovering from an ACL injury last year, or like that he suffered 2 seasons ago, but he sat out all of last year. So it's like you finally have those two healthy. You have depth. Like if everyone can stay healthy, you're sitting in a good spot. Like you're probably going to be a top 3, top 2 team in the West. Like that was just the reality of the situation. But like they weren't always healthy. I know Kawhi came back, I think 20 games into the season,
Yeah.
or it was something like that. He was on a short leash.
Yeah.
He sat out even additional time, and then with that, they had weird rotations. They weren't playing Terrence Mann a lot. They were relying on Reggie Jackson, who kind of helped them in the previous couple of seasons.
Yeah.
They were relying on Marcus Morris, who just looked cooked. Like it was a really weird season, and they finally figured it out towards the tail end when Kawhi Leonard came back and was playing his regular amount.
Hmm.
He looked like one of the best players in the league, and I think that kind of went under the cover a little bit. Paul George was still playing at a really high level. They acquired Russell Westbrook, who at the time I know a lot of people were critical of it, but I thought he was fairly good in the role that he had, and I
Yeah.
thought he
He was
looked.
good at the series too.
Yeah, he was very good in the series. I think this was the best defense I've seen him
Yeah.
play in quite some time. Just from like, yeah, he's had defensive struggles. He's had miscues. He gets lost sometimes off the ball, on the ball, whatever the case is. And you look at a guy that athletic, and we've always questioned like, all right, how is he not as good defensively as he is? Because he's this athletic, he's this quick. But I think a part of it's just like it's effort, it's motivation. Like that's what defense is half the time. Is like you need the effort, you need You need the drive to do it. And like you saw the drive, him taking the assignments of Kevin Durant at times in the series, taking the assignment of uh Devin Booker. And like Devin Booker went nuclear in this series. Like he
Yes.
averaged 37 a game.
Yeah.
He couldn't miss for the majority of this series. Like he was one of the best players that we've seen in these playoffs, along with the Jimmy Butlers of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was really, 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 really good. But Russell was able to take he wanted those assignments, and that was, I think, a testament to like, and he looked really good in the game, especially in the games that Kawhi and wasn't able to play in. As we know, again, Paul George missed the entire series, but like he looked. I mean, I know he shot poorly the first game and the last game, but just throughout the series, just from an impact standpoint, like he was really effective, and then they were able to get something out of Terrence Mann. They were able to get some supplementary production elsewhere, but just in general, like it was a really weird season for the Clippers, and again, you kind of hit the head on the nail a little bit. The series was decided by injuries, unfortunately.
Yeah. And speaking, you brought up defense, and that's something I wanted to bring up when it comes to Phoenix. And
Yeah.
my point was kind of proven a little bit last night in their first game against the Nuggets, where
Yep.
with that trade at the trade deadline, it's almost like a no-brainer. It's like if you were to ask anyone else in the NBA, hey, you're gonna have to give up quite a bit, but you're gonna get Kevin Durant on your team. Do you take it? Yes or
Yeah.
no? How many people say no to that? Like honestly, how many people say no to that?
Hardly anyone.
Exactly. But the thing about the situation in Phoenix, it's who they gave up. And
Yeah.
Mikal
Yep.
Bridges was vital to the defensive game plan for Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And now you go from having someone where maybe it's an off night from a lot of the primary scorers, because Mikal wasn't the primary option when he was in Phoenix. But we see he looked amazing as the primary option in Brooklyn, and I will forever curse Brooklyn for not biting on the 4 first-round picks that the Grizzlies reportedly offered for him. Like, come on, it's a great deal. Take it. Uh, there's no way they're touching him now.
Yeah.
But now you have to rely that your players are going to have to just outscore the Suns' opponents. Like they're going to give up 130 points. You just have to hope that Phoenix is hot enough to score 131 or more. And in the Clippers series, they were able to do that because the Clippers' two best players, their two all-stars, superstars, were injured.
Yep.
And it was Westbrook and Norman Powell and
That was the name I was missing. Norman Powell was their second best player, probably maybe their best player. He was awesome.
Another player I would love to see at Beale Street Blue, man. There's some bucket getter. Memphis needs a bucket getter, man. We just need that bucket getter off the bench. I take Jordan Clarkson too. I don't care that he tried to throw hands with the entire Grizzlies bench. I'd still take him. I think that's going to be their downfall. Is they have two of the best isolation players in the NBA. Devin Booker, like you said, he went ape in this series. He went crazy.
He went ridiculous.
And then of course Kevin Durant. It's mother effing Kevin Durant. Like
Yep.
even as advanced in age as he is and coming off that Achilles injury, he's one of the few people that's come off that Achilles injury and he looks just like he was before the Achilles injury. It's mind-blowing for someone that big, that tall, and that athletic to hardly lose a step like he has over the few years. But it's the defense. If one thing on offense just falls apart, if things aren't clicking right, then that's it. You can't stop the other team. They don't have anyone that they can rely on to switch on whoever is the primary option on the opposite team. How are you stopping them? They can't. They're essentially relying on the other team to go cold. That's the only thing that they can kind of hope for. They lost that defensive presence with Mikal Bridges. DeAndre Ayton, and in the game last night, I'll bring up last night's game again to prove my point. He looked kind of small around the rim last night.
Yep.
So, and I think that's what they were kind of relying on, was him kind of being that defensive anchor down low. but he didn't look like it last night. Now that could change. That could change. The first game's always the feel out game, but
Yeah,
I don't know, man. Going into this Nuggets series, and again we have like the first game to look at, which is I guess kind of unfair for us, but
it's fluky because I mean sometimes it's fluky, sometimes you look at it in the end and it's like okay, this was really like a signal, but there's been a number of instances more than the contrary towards like teams make adjustments and teams defend teams a different way. It's like,
yeah,
okay, maybe the first game is just a complete outlier or
yeah,
it is an indication of what really happens in
yeah.
the series. But last night's game was funky even from that standpoint. You're right.
Excuse me, sinuses crazy right now. If you couldn't tell from the way that I'm talking, and I sound like that I've just got like tissue just stuffed all the way up to my like up here into my brain. Um, but yeah, final series, and then we'll move on into our predictions. We've got the Cleveland and New York series. Kind of a surprise to me, actually, that it ended as quickly as it did. I thought this one was going to be the one that kind of had the potential to go fairly decently far. I had Cleveland moving on in this one, so I guess you can say I was wrong on this one too, but kind of disappointed in Cleveland too, and they didn't show up. They scored what 79 points in a
Yep.
game. That's not great. You held
Nope.
your opponent to under 100 points, but you still lost by 20.
Yeah.
That's that's
I think
rough.
it was our first 20-point loss of the season, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just from Cleveland's standpoint, the lights were too bright, as Jared Allen accurately said. The lights were just they were just too bright. And now they're a young team. They're really inexperienced, so I won't hold it too much against them. But I feel like kind of moving to your Heat, I think that New York is a team that is beatable. Now, Julius Randle, he got injured, didn't he? Did they is he still available or
He's
is
him
he
and
out?
Grimes, who got injured in this series, are both questionable heading
Okay.
into today.
Okay. 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 So, well, that is fairly interesting here. They still have Jalen Brunson, obviously, which his deal is looking like a bargain at this point. The way that he's been playing, and I think will forever be a stain on what's up. It's a quick tangent. What's up with Mark Cuban getting a foreign superstar and then getting a really good point guard and having the two of them together on the team at the same time, then getting rid of the point guard and the point guard absolutely like blowing up.
I mean, who knows? I mean, I've talked about this elsewhere. I think right after. I mean, I was at the time I didn't really see it clearly, and I was critical of like kind of everything, all the draft gymnastics they did to kind of clear up cap
Yeah.
and everything on draft night, where they made like all those trades, and it was just like, wait, what? They give up? I mean, so I was a little bit critical of that, but like once you saw Tibbs hire Rick Brunson, like in hindsight,
Yeah.
in the end, it's like you knew he was going to New York. I mean, he's from New York, I believe. He has that
Mm-hmm.
Villanova tie, and so it's like you kind of knew at that point that he was kind of going there. I mean, as
Yeah.
much as the Mavericks obviously had the money to do it because, I mean, they did have his bird rights at the time. Like, I think they had his bird rights.
They did, and they could have gotten him for cheap if they had offered him a deal, an extension before the season.
Right,
It was only like 50 million is what the value was.
right,
I think it was
right.
low. And for those of you that don't know, I'm referencing Steve Nash, who was at one point a Dallas Maverick with Dirk Nowitzki,
Right.
and and then Mark Cuban once again getting rid of the point guard and sticking with the foreign player. Now that could mean good news. That could mean eventually they win a title, as with Dirk, but right now it's not looking like it so much. But anyway, back to the point on hand. I don't have too many takeaways from the series. I thought the Knicks played really good defense. I think that was kind of like their big ticket item here. It is going to be interesting to see what happens with the injuries that has been suffered from New York moving forward. Um, but Brunson is a star. I feel like Barrett was kind of hit or miss this series. They
He was
didn't,
bad at the beginning of the
yeah,
series.
they did, but it was like they kind of didn't need him all that much. Everyone else was doing stuff. Now they may need him
Right.
now, but we'll we'll see. What do you got on this Cavs and Knicks series, Matt?
There's one thing that not missing, but we need to talk about, and that's how dominant New York was on the offensive glass. They were they corralled what at least I can't remember the exact number. I can look it up here in a second, but they were dominant on the offensive glass. Mitchell Robinson was the best big in the series, in a series that involved Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Julius Randle. Like he was just the best big on the floor. And New York, they were the second best offensive rebounding team in the regular season. They were second in offensive rebounding percentage, then corralling just over 31% of their offensive
Shout out
boards.
Steven Adams, man.
Shout out Steven. But that's Cleveland was 20th in defensive rebounding and 20th in total rebounding percentage heading into this series.
Yeah,
And when I wrote the preview for the site, check out vendettasportsmedia.com. That was the one thing, like, battle, like, who's going to win the battle on the boards? Because it's like, if Cleveland is this volatile defensively on the defensive glass, yeah, this series is going to be a slow paced. Possessions are going to be at a premium. And if whoever really wins that battle will likely win the series. And I had Cleveland in 6 because I didn't know how healthy Julius Randle would be. And I didn't know he looked okay. Like he wasn't great like he was in the regular season, but like he was he was all right. Like he was kind of where I expected him to be with how bad his ankle was, at least in the final couple weeks of the regular season. But Cleveland was, or not Cleveland, New York was dominant on the offensive glass, like just pure dominant. And it that's something I'm looking out for specifically in this Miami series is Miami was 4th in defensive rebounding percentage. They're not the biggest team in the world. They did fairly good against New York in the regular season in their 4 regular
yeah.
season meetings.
I have I have the by game offensive rebound numbers for the Knicks. So game one, they had 17 offensive boards. Game two, 13. Game three, get out of the way. Game three, they had 11. Game four, they had 17. Game five, 17.
Yeah, see, and I've said it before, rebounding wins games, or they win playoff series. It wins championships. Like rebounding, especially in the playoffs, because again, it's slower pace typically.
Mm,
If you're not the Warriors or Kings, it's a slower pace series. Rebounds come at a premium, and like there's it does not talked about enough how, like, the last thing that you need in a defensive possession is closing the possession, and that's rebounding the ball. Well, if you're not rebounding the ball, well, like I have it pulled up here, the Knicks corralled 39.4% of their offensive rebounds per NBA.com. That's 3 percentage points higher, or roughly 3 percentage points higher than the second best team, and that was the Sixers, who corralled 36.8% of their offensive rebounds, in large part due to Embiid and Paul Reed. But
yeah,
like the Knicks have 2 of the best offensive rebounders in the league in Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein.
yeah,
That is so important in a playoff series. And that's like one of the biggest things I'm looking out for in this Heat series is, can they get a collective effort from Bam, from Caleb Martin, from just whomever? And again, they did a fairly good job against the Knicks in the regular season. I think they had a 28.4% offensive rebounding percentage in the 4 games against Miami. And that's like modest. That's
hmm,
like middle of the pack if you extend that over an 82 game sample. But as we've seen with plenty of these playoff series, what happens in a 5 or 6 or 7 game sample
yeah,
may not resemble what happened in the previous however many games.
yeah,
And so that's so important. That's really what swung the series, in my opinion, is getting those second chance tip-ins and getting those second chance opportunities and capitalizing on them. And that's what the Knicks did really well. That's what Mitchell Robinson did really well. And that's not taking anything away from Brunson, who is probably one of the best players, if not the best player in this series, because how incredibly crafty he is, regardless of who's defending him. Like he's going to be an incredible pain in the ass for whoever. Like he was in the regular season he only played in 3 of the 4 regular season games against Miami, but in 2 of those games he put up 25, and I could just recall when I rewatched it these last few days, like he was an incredible pain in the ass because he's so shifty and he's so crafty, and it's like he gets to his spots no matter what. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, I know Cleveland doesn't have the best point of attack defense with Garland and Mitchell, but regardless, he was still getting to his spots. And even when they were throwing two at the ball, like he's still crafty enough, and he's still poised enough to find he's still poised enough to find that role man and to create a 4-on-3, 3-on-2 advantage. And that's what I think was like very important for that series. Like he was really, really good just throughout the entire series, and he got buckets, and he was able to create offense for himself and others when New York needed to, because it was a very sluggish, like physical series. But I thought what Mitchell and Hardenstein did on the offensive glass just couldn't be ignored. And I thought that was really the swing point, because it's weird how bad Cleveland was outside of, like, even with Mobley and Allen on the floor, they just weren't a good defensive rebounding team. And like a part of that's positioning yourself, a part of that's effort, but it just looked like New York was just outworking them on that end. And I wonder how that carries over. And I wonder how important that will be in this upcoming series.
Well, we can go ahead and move on and talk about that, and we can get to our predictions for the second round. So we'll start with the Miami and New York series. Obviously, Matt, you're going to be a bit more knowledgeable on this series than I am because it's your team that is involved with it. But we've talked about the rebounding battle. We've already established that Jimmy Butler is him. Both teams are dealing with some injuries coming into this series. How do you see it playing out?
I'll be honest. I'm not. I'm not super. I mean, I can't say I'm not super biased. Everyone has a bias, but I've actually gone back and forth on this series because the Knicks again did play Miami well in the regular season. I think in all 4 of their games, none of them were decided by more than like 8 or 9 points, if I can remember correctly. 2 of the Knicks beat Miami in 3 of the 4 regular season meetings. 2 of those came by 2 points. One of them came on a ridiculous Julius Randle buzzer beater over Bam, where in a game where Julius had 43 points and he just was making everything imaginable. Yeah. Kind of like how Jimmy was in this most recent Bucks series. But my final prediction on it is Heat in 6. I honestly don't feel great about it, because a big portion of this series will just be how Miami shoots from beyond the arc. The Knicks are a team that gives up a lot of 3-pointers like Miami, but again, as we saw throughout the regular season, Miami had the 4th worst 3-point percentage. Well, if they shoot 45% from deep again, they should be in a fairly good spot. But I don't know if that's ultimately going to be the case. Even if they shoot 40%, I'm expecting to regress a little bit. But even if they shoot 39, 40, 41% from deep, and if they can get contributions from Strus, if they can get contributions from Duncan Robinson, from Vincent, from Kevin Love, heck, even from Jimmy Butler, like they'll be in a fairly good spot. But at the same time, the Heat are a team that gives up a lot of threes, and the Knicks were one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the regular season. They were a top, I believe, 5 offense in the regular season, or top 10 offense. Like they were a really good offensive team, or at least they were in the second half of the season. And when they played Miami, like they were very good at creating those advantages and taking advantage of them. Like, for example, Miami at least in the most recent 2 matchups, they hedged a lot of screens, and they weren't doing their normal switching screen coverage. And that's in part because, I mean, they were involving Love in the action a lot, and he's going to get picked on a lot in this series too. But the Knicks did a very good job of moving the ball and cutting. And when they had those 4-on-3, 3-on-2s, they did a good job of being in the right spots and the timing of the passes and the timing of the cuts were like they were pristine. I thought they did a really good job of that, and I think that's going to give Miami troubles. The Knicks, I mean, they have, not to say better bodies, but they also have multiple bodies to throw at Butler.
Mhm.
Like that can't go without mentioning. Like Josh Hart was really good in the series against Donovan Mitchell. I don't think that same thing's going to happen against Jimmy because I mean, again, we just saw what Jimmy did against Milwaukee, but
Yeah.
they have multiple bodies to throw at Jimmy. Jimmy wasn't that good against Josh Hart in the regular season. Again, it's regular season Jimmy Butler, but I mean, they can throw Josh Hart. They can throw. I mean, they're going to throw Randall at him. They're going to throw quickly. They're going to throw Grimes. They're going to throw. I mean, when if he's healthy, they're going to throw whatever body they can at him. They're gonna put two on the ball, at least probably more so than Milwaukee did. Like they're gonna make it hard for Jimmy, and it's gonna be, I think, at least as the series goes on, it's gonna be reliant on, okay, can Vincent make shots? Can Strus consistently hit shots?
Yeah.
And these other guys hit shots, and that's the volatility of it. Because I mean, again, Miami was not a good 3-point shooting team in the regular season. Maybe that changes. I mean, they were better in the second half, but when you're shooting a lot of threes, I mean, the Knicks are going to protect the paint. This isn't going to be. I don't know how much of an opportunity Bam will have in this series to do what he does offensively. Mitchell's done a pretty good job against him in the past. They play a little bit of a higher drop, so it's not like Brook Lopez to where Mitch is just sitting in the paint the entire time. Like he'll come near the level of the screen and he'll drop a little bit. Like he'll be in Bam's airwaves a little bit, and they'll throw second and third defenders at Bam on those rolls, and whenever he's cutting or whatever, like whatnot, they're gonna try to do their best to protect the paint, and that's gonna be, again, Miami's gonna have to move the ball around the perimeter and create those advantages to get into the lane, to get those paint touches, to possibly convert or either kick out. And again, when they kick out, can they hit open shots? Like I have no effing idea at this point. Um, it's like that's why I don't feel great about Heat and 6. It's like, again, they have Jimmy Butler, they have the best player in the series, I would say. But how is this offense going to fare in a 7-game series against the Knicks? If it's similar to the Bucks,
Yeah.
it's going to be great. If it's like it was in the playing games or in the regular season, well then it's not looking as pretty.
Yeah, I mean, as you've been talking, I've just been going back and forth internally in my head because I think rebounding is a huge key. It could
Huge.
be, and man, the Knicks are so good at it,
You're
obviously.
right.
Um, but you know, Miami has enough to where if they could just get a few things to fall their way each game, they could edge it out. And like you said, the regular season, it's so close. Again, it's regular season, but it's so close. Games were decided just barely.
Barely. And that's how it was for Miami throughout the entire regular season. I mean, you may have seen the stats somewhere, but they
Yeah.
played 50 plus clutch games. They led the league in games that they either played in or decided by 5 or fewer points. Like they played a lot of close
Yeah.
games, and a bunch of them came against the Knicks,
I I
or
have
at
this
least a portion of them.
I have this feeling this could go 7. I do think
It
that.
might. It might. I mean, just in my head when I said Heat and 6, it was just like they closed it out and they're on their home floor. They're able to steal
Yeah.
maybe 1 or 2 in New York. But again, man, like New York can absolutely steal 1 or 2 of them in Miami. Like
Yeah.
it's not impossible. They're the Knicks. They're not as good or as talented as Milwaukee, but they're a pain in the ass,
Yeah.
and it's a different challenge.
Yeah,
And
it's
like
and
the
and
Knicks
it's
are
and it's
really
all
good.
about matchups.
Right. The
It's
Knicks are really good. So it's like I'm not trying to take anything away from them when I say they're not as talented. Like they're really, really good. I just with how Miami was in the regular season, I just no idea, man.
yeah. I
No idea.
They were both dominant in their series, but I do think Miami played the tougher opponent in round 1, and I think just that momentum again, I don't know. I'm contradicting myself in my mind while I'm trying to speak at the same time, and
It's
I'm
intriguing.
I'm gonna
It's a good series, man.
I'm
It's a
gonna
good series on paper at least.
I'm gonna go Miami in 7
Okay.
because all they have to do is just steal one game and then take care of business at home. That's all they have to do, and I think they can do that. So, but I will go Miami in 7.
Is that one? So that one game is coming in a game 7.
Listen, Game 7 Jimmy is different. You know, I could
Yeah.
or just a closeout game Jimmy. Closeout game Jimmy.
Yeah, closeout game, Jimmy.
But all right, so we kind of talked a little. We talked a lot about it, actually, the Philly and Boston series. So I'll go ahead and give you my prediction for this one. Because of Embiid's injury, I think Boston can close this out easily in 6. Not easily. Let me rephrase that. But I think Boston can close it out in 6. Just from I think that Philly is going to miss Embiid that much. It's hard. It's going to be not impossible, but it's going to be the difficulty is very high to win a playoff series against the defending Eastern Conference champions and presumably now the favorite to make it out of the East when you are missing your presumed MVP in Joel Embiid. I say presumed because just kind of from what I've seen from the media and the voting and everything that leaked, that it looks like he is more than likely going to be the MVP. And that's just kind of the vibe. Like, it seems like everyone in the NBA wants to give it to Embiid this year. I honestly don't care. He's not on my team, so it's whatever. But I think Boston can do this in 6. And I give Philly the 2 games because, again, Boston's a little weird sometimes on defense. And offensively, they could just go cold. Sometimes they'll settle. And it's like, you don't need to do that. And so
Missoula ball, baby.
Yeah, and because and again, Philly has great perimeter players that seem to look like a slight weakness. Again, it is because it was Trae Young, but other role players, when their names were called to shoot the 3, they answered in Atlanta. And you would presume that the players whose names will be called to shoot the 3 in Philly are better players than that in Atlanta. So I give Philly those 2 games, but I think Boston moves on in 6.
See, when I went over this with Germani, my first instinct was I said Boston in 5 because of the injuries.
Yeah.
Um,
me saying 6 is just very conservative of a pick because I picked Boston to sweep Atlanta and then it went 6, and so now I'm afraid to do that again.
Right. Right. So I mean, I can easily see this going 6. I just don't know how Philly beats Boston several times.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, I mean, with these injuries, I should say. And with a compromised Embiid, it's tough for me to foresee it happening, but I can also foresee it happening. I don't think Philly wins this series.
No.
But I think I'll stick with Boston in 5. Although I can then again foresee like just a couple games where Philly gets hot. Maybe Embiid comes back and doesn't look like me, even though he's 70%, 60%, like he puts up 30 or something somehow. I have no idea. Like maybe there's a couple games where it's like that, but I think Boston will take a 2-0 lead.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any time to catch Philly, or if any time to catch Boston, I would expect it to be in game 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no idea. But I'll say in 5.
5. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if it does go in 5. And again, I think Boston moves on regardless. So I've never been one to put too much merit into people saying, "Oh, you said it was in 6 games, but I said it was in 5 games, and they finished off in 5 games, so I was right and you were wrong. You suck." And I was like, we picked the same people to move on. I just thought it was going to be a bit more competitive. Is all. I'm sorry, but but anyway, if Boston moves on 5 or 6, doesn't matter to me. I think Boston's got this series regardless. Denver and Phoenix. Again, we kind of, spoiler alert, we know how the first game goes to this one. Denver is currently up 1-0, but how did you see this series playing out?
Well, after last night, it looks like we have a little bit of a math problem on our hands, a math conundrum. Because Philly, or not Philly, why did I say Philly? We were just talking about
Philly.
Denver made 16 threes. Phoenix shot 23 threes. Only made 7 of them, but they shot 23. Like when you shoot, it's not nearly as many, but you can't shoot as many threes as the team that you're facing makes, or slightly more. And heading into this series, I did the preview for the site. Again, check it out on BetNetaSportsMedia.com. I know I focused a lot on Phoenix's offense, but I was very like in my head, I was also questioning like, okay, how is Phoenix going to defend Jokic? Are they going to double him? Like, what exactly are they going to do? They don't have the size advantage. They don't have the front court depth to be doing it. Are they going to double Jokic? But again, doubling Jokic, you're almost committing suicide because of how good of cutters Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon are. You're opening up passing lanes. You're still not big when you're doubling him with Devin Booker. You're just not. Devin Booker's not going to get in Nikola Jokic's eyesight or line of sight. Like that's not going to happen. So I was questioning how this series would play out. I did expect Denver to win game 1, not because of like I thought they were going to win the series. I actually had Suns in 7. I went back and forth, but that's just where I landed in the end. Although on the Daily Show I did say Nuggets in 7, but I flip-flopped and I went Suns in 7 just because it's like I thought at some point Paul, Booker, Durant, and Ayton would will Phoenix to a victory despite them having a thinner bench. I mean, I do love the Bruce Brown, Christian Brown minutes that they have provided just throughout these playoffs and just throughout the season, but especially last night. Because Phoenix's bench, no offense, but they were not good at all. And that's a problem. I mean, you need a reliant fifth guy. I thought Torrey Craig, especially in that Clippers series, was a reliant fifth piece. He was knocking down shots, which is huge. But I was hoping that they would get more from. I mean, they haven't yet, but I was hoping they would get more from like the Landry Shamet, the Josh Okogie, who was good at the end of the regular season. The Bismack Biyombo, the Damian Lee minutes, and I was also presuming that the rotation would thin out a little bit to where at least they weren't going to be running Devin Booker and 4 bench players out like they did beginning of the Clippers series, to where they would at least have 2, maybe 3 on the floor at all times and hopefully stagger those minutes that way. But I did see Suns in 7. I just thought the offensive firepower that the Suns had would overwhelm Denver's defense. But you could easily make the contrary argument, especially with what we saw last night. I mean, another big question I had about Phoenix was how their shot profile was going to lend itself, because Denver was good defending the short twos, long twos, and from 3 this season, or at least they were better at it. But where they were lackadaisical was at the rim, and Phoenix was a team to where they don't get to the rim that often, but they're very good at making those tough twos, those contested twos, because they have Durant, Paul, Booker. They have those tough shot makers. And it's like, okay, if they're going to get to the rim more, at least I would expect them to, it opens up space to knock down those long twos, those short, and they're, again, very good shot makers. So it's like, I also didn't see them shooting only 23 threes. I mean, again, I know they shot very few threes against the Clippers, but they were also getting to their spots relatively at ease.
Yeah.
And I think Denver has a better defensive structure when, I mean, obviously this was at the time when Paul George and Kawhi Leonard weren't healthy. Mm-hmm. I thought Denver had at least a better defensive structure with KCP, with Aaron Gordon, even though Jokic is a little bit of a subpar defender. He's gotten better, but he's still subpar. Michael Porter Jr. isn't the best defender. He's improved a little bit, not a whole lot. Jamal Murray is still going to get picked on in the pick and roll. Bruce Brown's a better, good defender. That they were at times matching up with Ayton last night, and he was winning those matchups. It was just what? What's happening here? But that's just the Bruce Brown experience, and that's why we all love Bruce Brown. But again, I thought Denver had at least a better defensive structure, but at the same time, I still had questions about how they were going to stop the Magnificent Four, even though Chris Paul did have a little bit of a down series against the Clippers.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it may go 7. I had Nuggets in 7,
Okay.
and most of the same points I agree with you. I think that the offensive firepower with Phoenix can sometimes just be overwhelming. It doesn't matter who they're
Right.
playing, and I think they're good enough to where there's going to be more than just a few games where they are going off, where you have everything's working in tandem together, and KD, Book, CP3, they're all just playing wonderfully together. But what's interesting, so it it doesn't look like just the pure stats. It doesn't look like an inefficient night for Jokic, but for Jokic's standards, 9 of 21 from the field
Right.
is a little inefficient for him. And you're like, wait a minute, that's like, you're like in the mid 40% for the field for the game. That's not bad. And it's like, yeah, well, Jokic is a guy that normally goes like 10 of 12 from the field. Okay.
Right. Right.
Man, it's you held him to that, but he's just so impactful in so other ways that it doesn't matter where. And it's crazy to see him take 21 shots, because kind of up until this point you haven't really seen him like need to take that many shots. Usually those shots are kind of spread out a little bit more.
And he can get him whenever he wants
He,
to.
he can get them whenever he wants. So that's what crazy. Sometimes I feel like he just doesn't want to, and
No,
that's why he
yeah, I
doesn't.
agree. Yeah.
He's just like, yeah, just I don't want to work hard for it. I'm gonna just pass it to someone else and let them do whatever. I have a good friend that's a Nuggets fan, and we joke about that all the time. And it's like, oh, you can tell when Jokic is locked in or not, because if he's just
Yeah.
if he. But anyway, yeah, I think the reemergence of Murray absolutely goes beyond, like, if Murray wasn't playing how he is, this could be over fairly quickly for the Nuggets.
Very fair.
And then Gordon, highly underrated defender, especially on the perimeter
Right.
too.
Yeah.
I know people see him. He's more of a big forward. People know him more for the dunking and everything casual fans do, and everything. But no, he is a great perimeter defender, and he can even in some situations play against the 2 spot too. So he could be on a Book, he can be on KD, a Kogi, whoever out there. And well, I mean, I don't know why you throw him on a Kogi. You're kind of wasting him there, but
If he's helping, maybe, but
yeah, if
I
he's
don't. With Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on the floor, if that's the case, I don't
yeah,
know.
no, he's guarding one of the other two, but and I agree with you. I think the defensive structure is there for the Nuggets to where they have a night like last night where they're um, kind of, you know, they've got guys. Man, I'm drawing a really bad blank. I can't talk right now. My phone's also blowing up. I have like 5 people texting me at the same time. But I agree with you that they have the defensive structure in place. I kind of already talked about that. So
Yes, I think it's better. I mean, I've still been critical of Denver's defense. I
yes,
still don't
no,
love
no,
it.
it's better,
Yeah.
but it's not like top
Yeah.
tier or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, last night again was just indication of what I said earlier, talking about Phoenix, is where they really don't have that much defense, and they're hoping that their entire offense is working in perfect synergy. And last night it was not working in perfect synergy. Like, you got great performances from KD and Book, but no one else showed up to the party. And you need that when you don't have any defense at all. You have to have every single player show up. Paul needs to be there. Ain't needs to be there. Craig, Adebayo,
Adebayo.
Biombo, not Adebayo, Biombo.
I
Yeah,
was like, no, don't put this on me.
no,
I'm
no, no, no,
not
no.
trading back.
They've got to get more bigger bodies in there to throw against
Right.
Jokic, is what I was trying to say.
Right. No, I
Uh,
know what you
you know, they just have to hope that everything works perfectly on offense.
mean. Right.
And I think that it will for 3 games, but not for 4.
Very fair. Very
So,
fair.
so
It's been a weird Chris Paul playoffs. Just again, going a little bit of like a tangent.
yeah,
Like, I can't remember who wrote it, but someone from the Ringer wrote. I think it was Rob Mahoney wrote like a really good piece early in the Clippers series about like how he's adjusting to this new role of like the ball's not being in his hands as often, and he's not having to calculate things 5 steps ahead, but he's having to work off the ball more. They're leaving him open, and that's how it was in the Clippers series, and that's how at times it felt last night. And it's been weird because it's like, yeah, the ball's not in his hands more. I don't know how effective he is as like an off-ball player offensively, but even at that point, like when he's open, he's not. It doesn't feel like he's hitting many shots, and it
No.
feels like we saw at least 2 playoffs ago when they made the finals, and just throughout his time in Phoenix, like when he gets to his spots, I mean, not just in Phoenix, but like throughout his career, but like when he's able to get to his spots in the mid range, he's so effective, and he's so good at calculating things again 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. Like he's one of the smartest basketball players that we've ever seen, at least in recent memory. And when he's not being utilized, is that like it's also just weird the usage that Durant had in that series. But again, like Paul just wasn't knocking down shots. At least it felt like. I mean, I know the numbers may not. I think he got better as the series went on. The numbers may not support that, or they may support that, whatever the case is. But like when he was getting those open looks, like it felt like teams were daring him to hit open shots and hit open threes, and it just wasn't the case. And it's like, if that's the case and he's not hitting those shots in this series, that's a problem. That's a big problem. But to me, again, like everything leaned towards Denver. Again, just from all the stuff that we just talked about, but like I just had like this just raunching gut feeling that's like, Durant and Booker and the supporting cast are going to have a game where they go off, and it's like I feel like adjusting to the altitude is weird, and so that's again why most of the reason why I thought that Denver was going to win game 1, because it's like even though I think they mentioned on the broadcast last night that they arrived early and they like as every team should to get used to it, but like playing a full game in it, it feels like that first game every time. It feels like it can get a little bit wonky again. Shot diet for Phoenix wasn't great, and the shot making from everyone outside of Booker and Ayton, as you mentioned, or not Booker and Ayton, Booker and Durant, as you mentioned, wasn't what it should be, or wasn't what at the level it should be, at least comparatively to Denver. And so that obviously also played a case, especially after that for the final 3 quarters. But who's to say what will happen in games 2 and beyond? But it's not off to a good start for my prediction.
Yeah, and again, man, I'll just go back with Phoenix. It's a hindsight's crazy, and again, who says no to Kevin Durant? But missing Mikal Bridges and even Cam Johnson.
Yeah, Cam Johnson was really good in that Nets series.
He was. Be paying attention, Zach Kleiman. Be paying attention to that.
Same, Pat.
But so we both see this going 7, so it should be a very entertaining series. Now, the final series, as of recording, is not set in stone. It will be after tonight. But do you sway any differently on who the Lakers' opponent would be? Like, do you see the Lakers moving on regardless, or do you see, like, if Golden State's the one that gets in, Golden State can move on, or the young run and gun legs of Sacramento, are they the ones that could give LA the most trouble, or it just doesn't matter because Dylan Brooks has poked the bear and LeBron was going off on social media yesterday. Usually LeBron stays quiet on social media during the playoffs, but all of a sudden that man is tweeting rap lyrics and posting on Instagram like crazy, and it's something we've never seen of LeBron.
When I did my before the playoffs, when I absolutely had Milwaukee winning the entire thing, so throw that in the garbage. But I did a pre-playoff bracket with my dad, and we came to the consensus that I had the Lakers playing the Kings in the second round. And I had the Lakers advancing to the West Finals against Phoenix. I stuck on my laurels. I'll stick on my laurels. I think I've gone back and forth. At least I'm just thinking about this game 7 today. Like, it was a weird game 6 for Golden State because it just looked like it was just lethargic and sluggish. And I had a friend text me that the Kings were beating the Warriors at their own game, and it's like you're not wrong. Like they're out physically, like on the offensive glass, they're being more physical on the boards. They're hitting more threes. Malik Monk is like the second coming of Christ half the time. Like that's just how it was in Game 6, and it's just like if Golden State didn't close it out then, can I trust them to close it out on the road in a hostile environment in Golden One? Like, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, they did in Game 5, but Game 5 isn't Game 7. I mean, but then on the contrary, Golden State has the experience and they know what to do for Game 7. And that is also important because it's like, again, outside of like Harrison Barnes, outside of, I don't know, is there anyone else who had like very notable playoff experience that I'm missing? I know I am missing like a name or two, but it nevertheless, Sacramento's not very. They don't have much playoff experience.
Alex
Again,
Lynn somewhere.
yeah,
He's been in the league a while.
right. Like their team doesn't have playoff experience, and I don't know how much they're gonna. I don't know what it's gonna be like for them in a Game 7 versus a Golden State
Yeah,
team that
yeah. I guess you
has
could. I
been
guess you
here,
could
done
say.
that.
I guess you say Monk his time with the Lakers, or did he make the playoffs with the Lakers?
I don't think so
Maybe
because he
not.
was there
Okay.
last year.
Last year, yeah.
Was he there two? Was he there 2 years or just 1 year? I want to say it was just last year, right?
I thought it was 2 years. It might have been just 1 year. Let me go look real quick. You keep talking.
But like Golden State's been
It
here,
was just
they've
the one
done
year.
that.
You're right. Sorry to
Just
interrupt
the
you, but
1 year.
yes, just the 1 year. Okay, so
They've
throw that
been
out.
here, done that. They know what it takes in a Game 7, and so it's like that's where it's like you can lean on the experience there. But again, like, dude, I have multiple Kings fans, friends. They were on cloud 27 about making this playoff series, and I can only imagine what Game 7 in Golden One will be like this afternoon.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. It's going to be raucous. It's going to be loud. The cowbells are going to be all over the place. It's just going to be a crazy environment, and I don't know. I just don't know how either team will respond to that. But like I reluctantly will say Sacramento wins that game. I no idea, man. No idea. I don't even know what the betting line is. Again, if I bet it, Vendetta's worst gambler, it's probably gonna go the other way. But regardless, I don't. It's probably close as hell. I haven't looked at it.
I'll get it for you real quick.
But man, I still think just because of the pace that both Golden State and Sacramento operate with, I think that could give the Lakers trouble in a 7-game series. The weird thing about the Kings this series has been they haven't shot the ball well at all, at least from beyond the arc. And if that's not the case, I don't know if they'll beat the Lakers in a 7-game series because it's again a lot of that you're having a steady diet of contested long twos and trying to go up against Anthony Davis in the paint. I just don't know how that's going to hold up. So I would reluctantly pick LeBron James and the Lakers. Again, I don't feel good about this at all. If Golden State makes it, I feel a little bit better. But again, like Golden State, kind of like Memphis, they were just a complete size disadvantage. I mean, same thing with Sac. I mean, none of those three teams are particularly big enough, in my opinion, to handle Lakers team, at least since Memphis was without, as you mentioned, Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. But I don't love the matchups for either team. I mean, they could certainly win just because of the offensive firepower that they have. Golden State's very good defensively. Sacramento, not as much. I don't know how that's going to factor in this type of series, especially since the Lakers' shot making is a little bit hit and miss at times with their shooters. I mean, again, they've been better offensively in the second half of the season.
Yes.
As we all saw, they have more shot makers. They have better shot makers.
And the emergence of Rui has been
right. But like, I'll go back. I'd have to go back and forth on it. Like, I don't think I'd have a set prediction, but I'd probably reluctantly pick the Lakers again. I'd probably say for the most part because of LeBron and Anthony Davis. But I'm like, like the pace for Sacramento is just a different beast. And when you're talking about the legs of a LeBron James and the legs of an Anthony Davis, that can absolutely play a factor. I think that's played a factor in this Warriors series at times.
Yeah. And to just go back to the Grizz series with the Lakers, LeBron looked gassed Game
Yeah,
5, 4 minutes left. They took him out. He never came back
yeah,
in. And it was like a decently close game at that point. But he's just so gassed. He couldn't go
right.
anymore. And I think again, what helped LeBron and helped the Lakers is the fact that Memphis could not hit an open shot, and so their only other option was to drive on Anthony Davis. And it just so happened that Anthony Davis decided to turn into Prime Shaq out there.
Right,
so,
right.
uh, so can they keep that up for another series and maybe another series after that, and then the finals? I don't know. I don't know how far I can go
Yeah.
with this Lakers team, but I am going to stick to my guns. Also, I had the Kings moving on at 7, and so I'm going to stick with that. It's falling
For
into
this
perfect
series
order.
or against
For
the
this
Lakers?
series, for this series,
For this series,
for this
I had the
series.
Kings in 7 too, but
But man, with the next series, I'm kind of with you. It's like I reluctantly would have to choose the Lakers because I
I would flip flop
yeah,
back.
and it just it. I think what's going to stop the Lakers is when they finally come across a team that's able to hit open shots.
That right.
And
I think that's what would happen too. But
the
how the hell do I know if the Kings are going to do that? Like they had, because they
exactly,
haven't in this series.
exactly, and that's what I'm going off. That's exactly what I'm going off of. Is the Grizzlies couldn't do it, so why would the Kings be able to do it? Unless the Kings just randomly flip a switch in the second round and shots start falling.
They were really good in the regular season shooting.
They were.
That's what that was kind of like one of the reasons why I picked them in this series. But again, it's just weird that they've won 3 games and just collectively, I don't feel like I've shot in the ball very well. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but it
Yeah,
feels like,
no,
especially in the beginning of the series, it was like, wait, they're shooting what from deep and they're still winning these
yeah.
games? Like,
What has helped with the Kings? It has been the driving and getting to the basket, but it's because there's no Anthony Davis that has metamorphed into Prime Shaq down there on
right,
Golden State. Um, like for instance, in a couple of these games, they're shooting almost 50% from the field, but they're shooting less than 30% from three.
right.
So it's getting to the basket, it's getting to the mid range, but LA has shown that they can defend that. They defended it against a great team, almost a similar team in Memphis. And just because of that, I give the edge to LA in that series. Now, as for moving forward and to winning a title, I don't know because there are going to be teams that have better perimeter shooters and will actually hit their shots.
Denver could
Denver,
possibly
exactly.
Phoenix.
Yeah, the
If,
Denver,
if Phoenix
Phoenix,
shoots more than 23 threes.
exactly. And it's just it's odd. It's scary how many open shots that they gave up. And other teams are going to be paying attention to what got Memphis open. And they're going to implement the same thing because throughout the entire series, Memphis was getting those open shots. They just weren't falling. Someone is going to be able to get those shots to fall, and the Lakers will then lose. But until I see it, I have to pick them moving on from Sacramento. But I'm like you, I hate it, I don't like it, and I don't trust it.
Also, I remember watching a couple of the Kings Lakers regular season matchups, and it felt like the Kings played them really well too.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, having something translate to the regular season into a 7-game series, just that's not how necessarily how it works. But in a context like this, like just from what I'm remembering off the brain, it could possibly swing Sacramento's way if they hit the open shots, if they're able to get out in transition. I think that'll be an important factor. Like if they're able to run LA to death, that could possibly work too. I mean, the thing that's I think gone under the radar about the Lakers is they were one of the top defensive teams after the trade deadline, especially after the All-Star break. Like they really got it together defensively, and they really had a sound structure in part because of Anthony Davis and how dominant he was on the interior. And I don't know how that's gonna fare against like a Sabonis. Like I don't know how Sacramento they attacked a Kevon Looney and, with all respect, Draymond Green, but Anthony Davis isn't those two. Like Kevon Looney's not a bad player. Every team should want a Kevon Looney, but he's not Anthony Davis defensively. Draymond Green, for all intents and purposes, is one of the best defenders of this generation, but he's also not the rim protector that Anthony Davis is. Respectfully, he's just not.
He's not.
And I don't know how Sacramento would counter that, or even like a Golden State going up against a Sabonis and an Alex Len. I don't know how. I mean, we've seen what Golden State before. Like we know they've been here, done that. But just in terms of like we're just speaking about Sacramento, I don't know how it's going to carry over. I mean, Golden State, if Curry does Curry shit and Thompson does Thompson shit and Wiggins does Wiggins shit, I think they could beat the Lakers in a 7-game series.
Yeah.
I'll just have it on record right now. I absolutely think they can. Because, again, they've been here, done that. They know what it takes to beat a LeBron James in a 7-game series. They have the shooting prowess. So should Golden State, just if we're speaking on the contrary here, should Golden State advance, I feel more confident about them beating the Lakers in a 7-game series than I do Sacramento. But I also believe Sacramento can beat the Lakers in a 7-game series. But I'm more at question with that because, again, the playoff experience, how they play, but the pace. I'm contradicting myself. I can go back and forth on both of these matches, but if it was Kings Sacramento, I would very, very reluctantly pick the Lakers. Or if it was Kings Lakers, I very reluctantly pick the Lakers. But if it was Warriors Lakers, I guess I would feel a little bit better about the Warriors. But again, I also can see the Kings beating the Lakers. I don't love the I like the Lakers. They've played better, but I don't love them against either of these two teams. But I don't also love the Kings or Warriors against the Lakers, if that makes sense. Yes. I don't love either of them against either of them.
Yeah. Hey, this is a good problem to have. We finally have parity in the NBA. It's not just, all right, who wants to lose to Golden State or Cleveland? And that's the only two options. Those were dark times in the NBA. If you were a fan of 28 other teams in the NBA, it's like, why are we even doing this?
Right.
But all right, so that concludes our review of round 1 and our personal previews of round 2. Fairly similar mindset, I would say. Little variations here or there, but that's just how difficult these playoffs can be. But we're experts, so remember to tune in more often to here at Vendetta Sports Media and read everything that Matt does. Matt is a great basketball mind. I love having him on the podcast. Whenever we talk basketball, our podcasts go for a very long time, and the two of us helped lead an NBA draft or an NFL draft coverage for almost 5 hours.
Half of it was just talking, not half of it, but portion of it was just talking hoops.
Part of it.
I don't know about the 25th pick. Ask Trey. He knows that player's scouting report more than me.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, at the same time, Game 6 of Atlanta and Boston was going on, and it was a close game going down to the wire. Like, is this going to 7? This is nice.
Right.
So it's like we had to tune in. We had to tune in, and we had to talk about it, especially during the commercials, because what are we going to talk about during the commercials? But anyway, Matt, again, thank you so much for coming by. It's always a blast and a pleasure to have you on the pod. You got any closing remarks or anything you want to say before we end this?
Heat in 5.
Heat in 5. All right.
Heat in 5.
I saw your.
At least I hope it's Heat in 5 and not Knicks in 7 or Knicks in whatever the hell. Just go Heat. Beat the Knicks.
Listen, I will be
2.5 hours.
Since my team is out, I will be rooting for your Heat in the East.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode, the Court is in Session podcast. If you're watching us or listening to us, we appreciate you all the same. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified whenever a new episode drops. My name is Jackson Law, and that was my co-host for today, Matt. Shout out to Pacific Union Railroad. We'll see you guys next time.